Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, whatever time of day it is that you are watching this. Just a reminder that the Fridays and during Lent, we'll be doing the Saturdays. Percolator will be pre-recorded, so this is pre-recorded for you all. What would be yesterday or Thursday? For me, it's today. I'm not a time traveler, but we are continuing our devotional. We are reading the Journey to the Cross version of the Adam Hamilton devotional 24 Hours That Changed the World. This is for day 3. We have two scriptures, both from the Gospels. First from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 22, verses 24 through 26. And the second from John, chapter 13, verses 2 through 5. So here's the Luke reading. A dispute also arose among them as to which one of them was to be regarded as the greatest. But he said to them, "The kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those in authority over them are called benefactors. But not so with you. Rather, the greatest among you must become like the youngest, and the leader like the one who serves." And then the John reading. During supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. He then poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet, and to wipe them with a towel that was tied around him. I find studying the disciples in the Gospels to be a hopeful exercise for struggling Christians like me. About the time I feel that I am hopelessly lost, I read a passage such as Luke's account of the Last Supper where, as Jesus was preparing for his crucifixion, the disciples were sitting at the Passover meal secretly arguing over which one of them was to be regarded as the greatest. After 3 years with Jesus, this is what they were arguing about. It was sometime around the 6th grade that I encountered the idea of popularity. At my school, there were certain kids who were considered to be cool, defined by some combination of their appearance, their parents' wealth, their self-confidence, and their sporting prowess. By high school, the characteristics of greatness were expanded to include those students nearly universally recognized by the student body for their talents. At the same time, there was a second tier of greatness, defined within particular groups. In the band, it was the first chair kids. In sports, it was the starters. Among the antisocial kids, it was the kid who could be the most antisocial. We do not stop disputing which of us is considered the greatest when we reach adulthood. How does society generally define greatness today? Jesus, knowing that the disciples were arguing about which one of them was the greatest, did something most surprising. He got up from the table, went to the door, and picked up the pitcher of water, a towel, and basin that had been left there so the disciples could wash their feet as they entered the room. None of them apparently had washed their own feet, and certainly none had thought about offering to wash the feet of those fellow disciples, or even the feet of Jesus. Performing such a task, like the meal preparations Jesus had sent Peter and John to make earlier in the day, was the responsibility of a servant, and they were not servants. They were disciples. To their great discomfort, Jesus sank to his knees and one by one washed their feet. To make sure they understood the meaning of his gesture, he said, in essence, "This is what true greatness looks like." By washing his disciples' feet, the Son of God assumed the most humble of roles. Then he called all who would follow him to strive for that kind of greatness, to live their lives as humble servants. Long before the business world discovered the concept of servant leadership, Jesus was calling his followers to adopt that lifestyle. Would those who know you describe you as one who, in humility, seeks to serve others? The concept of servant leadership is unique. We discussed in the Advent Bible study the idea of Jesus as king. And in fact, I would almost say all of us, kind of didn't like that description because the idea of king carries with it one who uses their power and authority for their own means. And the idea of using that word to describe Jesus just seemed borderline sacrilegious, blasphemous even. And I think to a certain extent, we need to see that what they mean is the idea of Jesus serving his people as their leader. How do you serve as a leader? How do you lead as a servant? It depends on where your goals are aligned. For the disciples who are arguing there during the Last Supper about which one of them was the greatest, it was not about which one would go and do the most good for others. It was about which one of them got to wear the best star, got to have the best seat at the table. Many accounts put it as arguing over which one will sit at the left hand of Christ and which one will sit at the right hand of Christ, and who will have the best position of honor. And this idea of honor and kind of a hierarchical system is not specific just to the Hebrew, the ancient Israelites. We see this, the whole concept behind King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. The whole reason the table was a round table is that there was no head of the table. So no one could claim authority over anyone else. And sometimes I think this is a lesson we need to learn. That sometimes in order to be the best leaders, we first have to begin by serving. And nothing illustrates that better than Jesus washing the disciples' feet. This was reserved for the lowest of the lowest of the lowest of slaves. And so the idea of Jesus, the Son of Man, putting himself in that position shows what we have to do. We cannot use our status as Christians or followers of Christ to elevate ourselves, but rather as a calling to go and serve others. The weight of our faith is not meant to build ourselves up, but for us to build up the world around us. And requires sacrifice. It requires us to give of ourselves, to give up that status that we want oh so much, to give that up in the name of service. As always, I will end with the prayer, at least as always during this devotional, end with the prayer found at the end of the chapter. Lord, like the disciples, I yearn to be considered great by others. Grant me a servant's heart, so that I may discover that true greatness is found in humility and service. Amen. That is all I have for us today. Again, do keep the family of Marlene in your prayers. The visitation is Friday, or maybe for many of you today, 4 to 8 at the funeral home in Independence, the Rife Funeral Home. The funeral service will be at the Brandon United Methodist Church at 10:30 on Saturday. So for many of you, tomorrow. So do keep the family in your prayers. If you have any other prayer requests, feel free to leave them here and for others to pray along with you. So hope you all have had a good week this week, and I hope to see many of you on Sunday, if not earlier. So have a good day, everybody.